Hello and welcome back to Perspectives. On today's show, Jagtar Singh Johal spends his 38th birthday behind bars in India into his 8th year of arbitrary detention, still without conviction. His MP speaks out yet again in Parliament, raising his plight. But is the British government listening? We have a little more detail on Trump's Indian deportees as Sikhs for Justice offers a $1 million fund to protect any whistleblower with the courage to speak out from within India's research and analysis wing. And an outrageous mainstream Indian TV news broadcast that gleefully reports on a new campaign planning to murder Khalistanis, as India's fear of the movement's growing success raises yet another notch. Meanwhile, in Canada, the accused killers of Jagtar Singh Johal appear in court, and we have another report from the Invictus Games there in Canada. All this and more on today's show, but joining me as always for Perspectives is our very own correspondent in Canada, James Cousineau. Good morning, James.
Good morning, Angus, and good morning to our viewers out there. Thanks for all your amazing comments. I noticed that a few of you did comment on the Invictus Games. We will be bringing you reports throughout the week with a special wrap-up and why it's important to Khalistan, to the Sikh community, and the world as a whole. At the end of the week, we'll wrap that up. So until then, thanks for joining us, and away we go, Angus.
Indeed we do. James and I together will be bringing you our perspectives on the daily news affecting the Sikh community across the world. And of course, as usual, we take a look at loads of great comments which have been filling up below the video. So thank you as always for those. Right, James, what are you going to start us off with this morning?
It is another day and another court appearance for the four charged in the assassination of Jagtar Singh Nijjar. Now, those charged are Kiranpreet Singh, age 28, Kamalpreet Singh, 22, Kiran Brar, 22, and Amandeep Singh, 22. Now, of course, the community has been waiting for justice, has been waiting for things to move along, and it has been a slow process. A part of that, of course, has to do with the amount and sheer volume of evidence as well as documents that are being reviewed by both sides, the prosecution and, or in Canada as we call them, the Crown Prosecutor and the Defense Counsel. Now, we know that this is going to be a long trial when it kicks off. Today, a court appearance will happen a bit later, and I will be there to cover it. But I think that what is really important is that people understand the complexities that are involved here. With that said, in Canada, we have a time limit on trials and on appearances. So this trial must get moving. And although that is the case, I do not expect for a whole lot to happen today. I think that at this point, they will start looking at scheduling the trial, or they will look at another adjournment or continuance in order to review any more information. Now, with the recent report by the Foreign Interference Commission, people were disappointed that there was not more detail about the assassination of Shahid Nijjar and more information on the ongoing threat. However, we also reminded you through our coverage of that this, of course, is something that was focused on the Canadian political side and Elections Canada to look at the integrity there. We do anticipate that information will, however, come out during the trial that may or may not link directly to India and name some of the individuals. And as I say, may not, is because although some of the evidence may come out in court, they may not release the names publicly or have some type of a publication ban, as there is still, of course, the Canadian Security Intelligence Service investigating involvement there. So they may bring that behind closed doors and have that agreed to in terms of fact with the judge and the two sides within the court. Now, the other question is whether or not any of these individuals, as it gets closer to trial, are going to turn and give evidence for the prosecution. And that is another option that may come up. One or more of them may come up with information and volunteer that in exchange for a lighter sentence come sentencing time. We don't know. That is pure speculation at this point, but it definitely is one of the possibilities that's on the table. Now, we already know that the Surrey courthouse will not be holding the trial. They have been moved to the Supreme Court, so that takes it away from the local courts. But the individuals are still in custody. There has been a lot of rumor and even false news reports coming out by the Indutva Media Factory that the individuals were released on an appeal of their bail conditions or their bail application, and that was completely false and just there to stir up the community and to create anger and, of course, a false narrative by the India government. Now, in certain areas, of course, we know that there is also the potential of the organized crime involvement, and that seems to be not only India, but China, Russia, and others who are seeking transnational repression or acting in that manner to hire out these types of assassinations, these type of contracts on individuals and using the criminal element. Now, in Canada, in December, there was not a whole lot of fanfare around a special report that was brought out on organized crime in Canada. But it did definitely bring to light that there is a lot of involvement and a lot of gangs that are taking place within Canada. And I thought I would just cover a bit of that because of the way that it ties into the assassination of Hardeep Singh Nijjar. Now, the Criminal Intelligence Service of Canada, or the CISC, network assessed and assigned a threat rating to 668 organized crime groups as part of the 2024 integrated threat assessment process. 7 are assessed as national high-level threats, 128 are assessed as medium-level threats, and 533 are assessed as low-level threats. In the summary, it also brought up that 45% of the organized crime gangs are assessed to be operating beyond their base provinces. So we've seen that lately in terms of arrests and operations that have been crossed the border between BC and Alberta, as well as from Ontario, Quebec, and then reaching between the west and the east as well. So depending on which gang we're talking about. And when you look at the organized crime groups, they are reported to be linked to 48 countries, and that was just in 2024 alone. The top 3 countries to which the most groups have been linked remain consistent to include the US, Mexico, and Colombia, which would be a fair way to say that there is a lot of illegal migrants that cross the borders into the U.S. and into Canada that are bringing the cocaine and other narcotics and other illicit substances cross borders, and in receiving the international shipments coming in from India, from China, and other regions around the world, and of course teaming up with the other cartels and gangs that are operating in all of these other countries that are looked at within the report in itself. So the other thing that they looked at is that the International Organized Crime Group is exploiting Canada's strategic geographic location and borders to facilitate the transit of illicit goods between North America and other regions such as Asia, Europe, and Latin America. Now, of course, between the various borders of Canada, we have 3 oceans, 2 of which are very crucial shipping ports in Vancouver and in the east. So, of course, that opens up the opportunity for international shipping, both inbound and outbound, for the narcotics and fentanyl and other issues that are plaguing our communities and plaguing communities worldwide. Now, the OCGs continue to adapt and diversify in order to further the criminal activities and increase profits. And again, a part of that is working with the RAW agency, the RSS, as well as other international governments and intelligence agencies. And that brings in a lot of money for them, but it also gives them an opportunity to work with corrupt individuals and government officials in some overseas governments that allow certain shipments in and out in exchange for the criminal activity that they partake in, whether it is extortion, acts of violence, or even murders, such we've seen in the case of Hardeep Singh Nijjar. So with that said, of course, the community is very anxious to get this moving forward, to get this case resolved, not only to bring justice to these individuals, but also to really ensure that the focus and any information that's being held back in relation to the government of India is exposed, and that further information is obtained by CSIS, by the RCMP, and at the end of the day, most importantly, to the community here in Canada, to ensure that we do everything we can as Canadians to keep all Canadians safe and all visitors on our soil safe. Now, we'll just do a quick overview of the Nijjar case, and that, of course, we know that the actual assassination took place at the Gurdwara in Surrey, British Columbia on June the 18th, 2023. At that time, he was leaving the Gurdwara, heading home for dinner, and he was a very instrumental leader both at the Gurdwara but also in our Surrey community, so his loss has been felt far and wide. In terms of the diplomatic tensions, we know that on September the 18th, 2023, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced in Parliament that there were credible allegations linking agents of the India government to Nijjar's killing, and the assassination led to a significant strain in Canada-India relations. And that, of course, further led in September 2023 to Canada expelling senior diplomat and India retaliating and expelling some Canadian diplomats. So that also led to the suspension of visa services and other services that would be provided by the different agencies on both sides of the government there. On May the 3rd, 2024, 3 Indian nationals that I've already named were arrested, and those arrests took place in Edmonton, Alberta, and charged with first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder with the alleged hit squad there. And then another individual, the fourth one, Amandeep Singh, was arrested in Ontario, and he was also in custody on unrelated weapons and other charges that were happening there. On May the 7th, 2024, the three initially arrested appeared by video in a British Columbia court, which was in Surrey, British Columbia, and they continued to have a very visual presence by the local Sikh community, both inside the courthouse and outside, and that is something that we've covered, so if you missed it, you can go back to our previous reports from that time. The trial was adjourned on August the 8th, 2024 for a fourth time and set a new date of October the 1st, 2024. Now, of course, we know that this is going to be later today, that it comes up again before the judge, so we'll see what happens. Again, I'll be at the courthouse to report on this on tomorrow's episode, and we'll give you updates, of course. Once again, January the 8th, 2025, all 4 accused were granted bail by a Canadian court. The trial was moved to British Columbia Supreme Court within the next hearing scheduled for February 11th. And of course, we know, as I covered, that report was completely false about the bail being granted. They have been denied bail time and time again. They are in custody. They are not, once again, they are not out on bail. January the 9th, the false reports, we already know about that and covered that. And as to the current status, it is, again, later today. They will have their appearances in the court, and we'll see what happens from there. Once again, we'll bring you updates on the show tomorrow about what happens in court today. Angus, it is something that the community is anxious to get resolved and to be able to put behind them. But at the same time, it is an unfortunate situation that the delays continue to have that ongoing impact.
Indeed, and of course there's a deep feeling of frustration, of course, from the general public, not least those particularly connected to the case. But unfortunately, the law has to take its due process. The law doesn't move very quickly. It certainly doesn't move as slow as it does in India, as we often report, but it does need to go through its due process, and it takes time, unfortunately. And that is frustrating because people are impatient. They want to see a result. We need to know what is the story here. But we mustn't forget that these gentlemen are innocent until proven guilty. But of course, we do look forward to that result, that outcome of that trial as soon as possible. But of course, the problem there, of course, it does leave this vacuum of information And wherever there's a vacuum, nature, as they say, abhors a vacuum, and of course misinformation finds a ready home in vacuums like that. So it's very easy to spread misinformation or even just speculative information. And that's been the problem here, and that has been the case all the way through. Of course, as you say, it's likely that a lot of this case will be heard in camera. If it does involve the intelligence services, it's likely then that means that a lot of the evidence delivered in court might not be for the public eye, it might not be for public consumption, it will be held in secret only for maybe the judge and the legal teams. That again will lead to more frustration, but unfortunately that is how it happens with the due process of law. The other speculation, of course, here, which I find most interesting of all, James, is this reference: could they do a deal? You know, if they do really know some juicy information that could indeed lead back to the Indian government's involvement in this killing, that really would, I'm sure, interest the authorities and the legal authorities, and indeed the government of Canada, and of course by extension the US government. They, I'm sure, will be very willing to do a deal if indeed there is damning evidence and proof even of a link to the Indian government. So that is a juicy thread that we'll keep an eye on, and hope that does indeed lead to something. And then, of course, leading on to the bigger picture story here, I think, as you rightly said, James, there really is this issue of organised crime gangs, organised crime syndicates, whatever you want to call them. This is a global problem, and it doesn't just come from India, it does come from other nations as well, but India has particularly targeted North America, as we often report. We certainly know the Bishnoi gang, for example, are operating in California, which has caused various problems there, certainly for the Sikh community. Likewise for the Canadian Sikh community, definitely there are issues there, of course, by extension, we're assuming it was organised crime acting as proxies for the Indian government. These guys were part of organised crime in Canada, just acting as proxy killers for the Indian government. So again, it does give the Indian government a useful tool, a platform to launch their own nefarious activities against the Sikh community, and indeed other populations should they see fit. So unfortunately, this is a problem for North America, and actually for Europe just as much, but certainly North America has identified this problem. They are having to act on it, but it's certainly, we all know where a lot of this is coming from. We regularly pointed out on this show, James, a lot of this is coming from the Indian government. Unfortunately, this is an Indian government that is currently running out of control. It is unaccountable, and it is using these proxy crime syndicates for their own nefarious activities. Let's hope we get to the bottom of it, James.
Absolutely, Angus, and again, it is something that the community needs to move forward on in order to move to the next level of healing, and to reduce some of the suspicion that you see that the Hindu is pushing through their false reports on this story. So again, we need to move forward with that. We need to find some closure and healing for the community, if there's going to be any at all. And with that said, we're talking about community. And of course, the world community has come together in Vancouver, as we've already discussed in last night's show. And that is through the bringing of athletes who are injured in the service of country, in the service of bringing peace to the world and defending their borders. And with that, of course, we're talking about the Invictus Games. And not only were there some big events happening on the sporting end of it, but also the Duke and Duchess of Sussex appeared at the Squamish Nations Cultural Centre as a step towards healing and reconciliation for the First Nations and the Indigenous people of Canada. So a very big day on the event side, but also on the community and the cultural side of the event as well. So let's take a look at what was going on today. And here we go. Welcome to another report on the Invictus Games happening in Vancouver and Whistler, British Columbia, Canada, from February the 8th to 16th. With a spectacular start on the first 2 days, here's a summary of what's been going on. Of course, we know that on February the 8th, the opening ceremonies were held at BC Place Stadium. The ceremony was a star-studded event featuring performances by global artists like Chris Martin of Coldplay, Katy Perry, Noah Kahan, Nelly Furtado, and Roxanne Bruno. The ceremony was described as unforgettable, with a vibrant atmosphere celebrating the resilience and spirit of the competitors. Notable moments including Chris Martin performing the Invictus anthem live for the first time, and the transformation of the stadium into a sea of blue representing the Pacific coastline. In terms of sporting events, the day also saw the commencement of sports with the first pools of wheelchair basketball at the Vancouver Convention Centre. This marked the beginning of the competition spirit of the Games, with athletes from around the globe showcasing their skills and determination in adaptive sports. The cultural elements are something to also take note of, and the event was held on the traditional territories of several Indigenous nations, with cultural acknowledgements and performance reflecting the commitment to Canada's Truth and Reconciliation Commission calls to action. On day 2, that was February the 9th, of course, we know that the sports continued with wheelchair curling competitions that began at the Hillcrest Recreation Centre, adding to the winter sports dimension of this year's games. Wheelchair basketball continued from the previous day, providing fans with more action-packed matches. Community engagement is also the focus of parts of the Games, and the Games fostered a sense of community and inspiration with activities and events designed to encourage public participation and support for the athletes. Attendees and volunteers shared sentiments of unity, inspiration, highlighting the unique atmosphere of the Games. The media and public reaction was shared a lot on social media, particularly with the official Invictus Games account on X, described Day 1 as epic, underscoring the high-energy competition and the Invictus spirit that was evident from the onset. The summary reflects a blend of sports, entertainment, cultural respect, and community involvement that characterizes the Invictus Games, focusing on recovery, rehabilitation, and honoring those who have served their countries. Prince Harry and Meghan Markle visited the Squamish Indigenous Cultural Centre as a part of their activities related to the 2025 Invictus Games. Some of the key points for their visit was, of course, the main purpose of the visit was part of the couple's engagement with the cultural heritage of the region, especially significant as the Games were held in partnership with the First Nations communities, specifically the Squamish Nation. The visit was described as righting a wrong from the past, highlighting a moment of reconciliation and cultural acknowledgement. During the visit, Harry and Meghan participated in several cultural activities. They toured the language nest, and I apologize, there is another name for that in the Squamish Nation language. However, I am not going to try to pronounce it and dishonor it. Where they met families dedicated to raising children fluent in the Squamish language. The programming included songs, sign language, and other cultural practices showcasing the community's efforts in preserving their heritage. The visit was not only about cultural immersion, but also about acknowledging the historical significance of Indigenous communities in the context of the Invictus Games. The Games logo was created in collaboration with artists from the 4 host First Nations, symbolizing unity and the inclusion of Indigenous perspectives. Wilson Williams, a spokesperson for the Squamish Nation, described the visit as a special moment that broke barriers and cleared a path for Indigenous people in the context of the Games. The visit was seen as an act of reconciliation, emphasizing healing, unity, and community support. The media and social media coverage. The event garnered much attention on platforms like X, with users sharing updates and sentiments about the significance of the visit, emphasizing the cultural exchange and couples' engagement with the community. The visit underscores the broader theme of the 2025 Invictus Games to engage with and honor the cultural heritage of the host nations, promoting healing and reconciliation. Team Unconquered at the 2025 Invictus Games referred to one of the teams participating under the Unconquered banner, which typically includes athletes from various nations who are not part of a national team or are from countries without a full team. And what we know about their performance on day 1 was that they performed well in the wheelchair basketball. They faced Team Netherlands, and although they played well, they still lost that game to the Netherlands, but it was a great game all the same with great spirit. The Invictus Games often feature teams like Unconquered to ensure that athletes from smaller countries and those without enough participants for a full team can still compete, promoting inclusivity and the game's spirit of resilience and recovery. After day 1 and day 2, we've seen some medals already been awarded. We saw Israel winning in the gold category for the wheelchair basketball, and the Republic of Korea. Congratulations to them for taking home gold in the wheelchair curling. We also know that in terms of the silver medals, we saw the United Kingdom winning for curling in the silver, and of course the United States taking home silver for the wheelchair basketball. Following up that with bronze for curling was Team Israel as well. So that was in the curling realm. So congratulations to them. And we cannot forget Team Unconquered. That was team number 3 for Unconquered, and they took home the bronze in the wheelchair basketball. We will be keeping you up to date on more developments, more awards, and of course, summaries and highlights of the various events as they go on throughout the week. Tomorrow, we will be visiting some of the highlights, including the much-anticipated snowboarding events. There will be other medal events as well on the 11th of February, and that includes the skeleton and medal runs. So we'll keep you up to date on that. Thanks for tuning in and following along and celebrating along with us. Don't forget that you can also find information on the Invictus Games through their website at invictusgames2025.ca. Keep up to date on this and other events as they happen. Thanks for tuning in, stay safe, and once again, celebrate the uniqueness of the Invictus Games here in Vancouver and Whistler here in 2025.
And we must stand together and show them that care. After the fight is through, we will be there, we will be there, till the pain is cured from the tragedy endured.
So as you can see, Angus, it has been a lot of excitement, and hey, some of your team from the United Kingdom will be bringing home some medals. It's looking great out there, Angus.
Indeed, and yeah, great report, great to see. There's some fantastic sports happening there, and well done to the United Kingdom team. One of my favourite sports, curling, which I have indeed enjoyed myself when I lived in Scotland. A fantastic sport, so well done to the UK on that. But it is a lovely thing to see all these men and women competing at such a high level, actually, and incredible. The wheelchair sports, for example, are just an inspiration to watch. Of course, then, what I also enjoy about the Invictus Games is this nod to the cultural roots and the cultural identities attuned to each nation. I think it's very nice to see that being brought in as well. I always like to contrast this with the Olympics. The Olympics, to me, has lost a lot of its magic because I think the Olympics movement has become so associated with money, corruption, etc., etc. It's rather lost its way, I think, in terms of its sort of feeling and its sense. But the Invictus Games does actually seem to move into completely. In fact, I think the Invictus Games is almost taking over from the Olympics in terms of inspiration and aspiration. So. Yeah, I can't let a report go by without mentioning Harry and Meghan. I mean, where to begin? I don't want to go down that tangent, but certainly they're always met with a certain level of derision, certainly in this country. And I think Donald Trump's threatening to throw them out of the United States has actually most of the United Kingdom standing up saying, no, we don't want them. Please keep them. And it does. I think one of the main criticisms, particularly related to the Invictus Games, is it's become more of a Meghan show rather than the actual athletes themselves. And I think that is a pretty valid accusation. I think she, more so than her husband actually, she does, I think, like to sort of, let's say, steal the limelight more than those who actually deserve it. So that is a criticism I'm quite happy to raise as well, because I'm certainly no fan. But anyway, that's the only time I'm going to mention Harry and Meghan, as it's not too relevant. But it did occur to me watching this film, James, and it's slightly on a more poignant note. Of course, we mustn't forget that every athlete at those games is a victim of probably war in most cases. They are athletes who have suffered terribly from war, and you see all these nations represented in the Invictus Games, and you think, fantastic, so many nations taking part, great, until you then suddenly think, hang on a second, every nation that has an athlete there is a nation that has an athlete that's lost a limb or been seriously injured through an act of war. That proves how widespread, how prevalent war is, this evil of war. Mankind just does not seem to be able to stop killing each other. That's the poignant note I take away from that, James.
Absolutely, Angus, and I think you hit it right on that. It's about it's not about the commercialization that the Olympics are. This is more about camaraderie. It's about actually the spirit of sport, the spirit of mutual respect for each other as athletes and as people. And let me tell you, in meeting a lot of the athletes, I could probably sit down in a pub and have a beer with most of these guys. Whereas with the Olympic athletes, not to mention their dietary restrictions, but just the fact that, these athletes that are at the Invictus Games are approachable. They are just, I just have nothing but respect for them and the battles that they've gone through and the training and abilities that they have that they've brought through to the spotlight, and hopefully giving inspiration to others, Angus.
Indeed, absolutely fantastic. So we'll continue to watch those games with awe, I have to say. Right, let's move on to my first story, and let's move to more serious situations. And this, of course, is an update on the situation of Jagtar Singh Johal. Poor Jaggy has just spent his 8th birthday behind bars in India. He is arbitrarily detained, as he has been officially labelled by India. Of course, UK-born Jaggy, he is a British citizen. He was also a noted Sikh human rights blogger. He was incarcerated just after his wedding in the Punjab in 2017. He was bundled into the back of a van by plainclothes policemen in India as he literally popped out, just left his wife in his hotel bedroom, popped out to buy something from the local shop, and he was essentially abducted by the police and hasn't been seen since. We do know he's been tortured in prison. We have evidence of widespread torture when he was behind bars, and he has. We still await any conviction. He still remains behind bars, still without conviction into his 8th year. It's absolutely outrageous. And as many websites have, many supporting websites have pointed out, as his 38th birthday passed, that was on Sunday the 9th, he has spent 2,655 days behind bars of wrongful imprisonment, 2,655 days of torture and abuse, likewise of human rights breaches, of injustice, of arbitrary detention, without evidence, without conviction. Again, it's an absolute legal outrage, as we say on a regular basis. His local MP is Douglas McAllister in Scotland. He has actually, I have to say, finally at last, it took him a while to get going, but he has actually finally, once again, raised his case in Parliament. Let you just play this.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. On Sunday, my West Dunbartonshire constituent Jagtar Singh Johal will celebrate his 38th birthday. This will be his 8th birthday held in solitary confinement, arbitrarily detained in an Indian prison. Can the Leader of the House raise his case with her Cabinet colleagues and ensure that our government continues to raise Jagtar's case at the highest levels of the Indian government and help accelerate my constituent's return home to his family in West Dunbartonshire?
Leader of the House.
Well, can I thank him for raising the difficult and tragic case of Jagtar Singh Johal, as he says, who's now been in prison in India. We have raised this issue with the Prime Minister Modi on a number of occasions, and we do also on every occasion underline the need for an urgent resolution. I will ensure that the Honourable Gentleman has a full update from ministers, and if that's necessary, bringing that to the floor of the House.
Andrew Ross.
Yeah, blah, 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 blah. Heard it all before. That was the Leader of the House responding on behalf of the government. And again, another government spokesperson comes out with the same, well, yeah, we're working on it. Yeah, we raise it every time we talk with Narendra Modi. But as I keep saying, where are the results? We'll only judge you on results. And so far, all we seem to be talking about are trade deals. Well, for one thing, I don't see a trade deal, but I certainly don't see any release of Jagtar Singh Johal. So again, all eyes on the British government. For me, they're just failing. It doesn't actually take much to be a little bit more forthright, a little bit more robust on the international stage to demand that one of your citizens is released after 8 years of arbitrary detention against any known rule of law, any known democratic rule of law. It's an absolute legal outrage. Meanwhile, Jaggy has appeared for his 147th trial hearing. I'll just say that again, 147th trial hearing at Bagapurana Court in Moga. His defence statements were signed for the co-accused, but not for Jaggy, as they have not been returned from the jail. The hearing has therefore been adjourned to the 15th of February for potential arguments from each side. So this has happened again, another adjournment. It's just become a joke now. It's become a farce. This is the farce of Indian law. So we will appear shortly for his 148th trial hearing. In other words, it's very clear what's going on, and it's very clear that, as has been said behind the scenes from India, is that we will detain Jagtar Singh Johal forever, just to send out a message to anybody who dares stand up against the BJP and the RSS. That's what it's all about. It's another legal outrage from India, James.
Absolutely, Angus. And, it's been going on, as you said, for 8 years now, his 8th birthday behind bars, which is just unconscionable in any regard for a country who declares itself as a democracy to just arbitrarily withhold the rights that they are due and should be afforded, not only as a nation, but under international law. And, it's just disgusting how that goes on. And I would challenge any of our viewers who are viewing this from India. One question I do have is whether or not he is able to receive international letters and greeting cards or stuff like that of support. Because, I know that it would be probably inspirational to keep him going if he was able to receive any letters and maybe, greeting cards or whatever from around the world, just to really remind him that people have not given up on him, and for his family to know that, again, the world is watching, and even more importantly for India to know that the world is watching, Angus.
Indeed, I think that's a great idea. And I did speak to his brother Gurpreet a few weeks ago in an interview, and certainly his family are there every day fighting the good fight. So our thoughts remain with the family, thoughts with Jaggy, and we certainly on this channel will not forget Jaggy's plight, and we will keep campaigning and pressuring the British government, which so far has been quite clear in their failure to get him freed. Okay, James, let's move on to my second story. And, we talk about India, and we often talk about the Govt media. This deeply partisan media. India, of course, languishing in 159th place, just above North Korea and Russia in the World Free Press Index. In other words, India does not have a free press. It has a very partisan press, a very pro-Modi press. And it jumps from outrage to outrage on a daily basis. I want to play you today. This is something that has just been released on Republic TV. Let me just play you this video.
स्वस्थ होंगे करने जा रहा हूं आज की एक बड़ी खबर के साथ। पिछले कई दिनों से आप सुन रहे थे देश तोड़ने की कोशिश करने वाले, खालिस्तान बनाने की मंशा रखने वाले क्या हरकतें कर रहे हैं। अब बारी भारत की थी तो भारत ने एक्शन शुरू कर दिया है। खालिस्तानियों पर सर्जिकल स्ट्राइक की तैयारी हो गई है। बाकायदा बड़ी बैठक में फैसला लिया है सरकार ने कि हम हरगिज बर्दाश्त नहीं करेंगे। भारत को तोड़ने और खंड खंड करने की जो भी कोशिश करेगा, जो भी साजिश करेगा, उस पर कड़ा प्रहार होगा। उसकी तैयारी हुई। अगली तस्वीर दिखाई। एनआईए की टीम हर वो जगह, हर वो संपत्ति कुर्क कर रही है, जब्त कर रही है जिसका ताल्लुक सीधे खालिस्तान से है, उसके समर्थकों से है। कोई भी ऐसा तत्व हिंदुस्तान में नहीं रहने पाएगा। अगली तस्वीर दिखाऊं। अब है तैयारी ये कि ये जो खालिस्तानियों का सरगना बना बैठा है अमेरिका और कनाडा में, पन्नू पर बड़ी स्ट्राइक होने जा रही है। इसका खात्मा ही खालिस्तान का खात्मा होगा। अगली तस्वीर दिखाइए। बाकायदा एनआईए ने जो लिस्ट जारी की है आतंकियों की, उसमें पन्नू की तस्वीर है। ये वो तस्वीरें हैं जो नेशनल इन्वेस्टिगेशन एजेंसी ने जारी की है। हिट लिस्ट, परमजीत सिंह, सरबजीत सिंह, बेनूर, ये सारे नाम इस लिस्ट में शामिल हैं। अब सवाल यह है कि ऐसे लोगों पर शायद ये कार्रवाई बहुत पहले होनी चाहिए थी, लेकिन अब ऐसे लोगों पर बड़ी स्ट्राइक की तैयारी है। रिपोर्ट देखिए। खालिस्तानी आतंकियों पर होगी सर्जिकल स्ट्राइक। मतलब जो भारत को तोड़ने की सोचेगा उसका काम तमाम हो जाएगा। कनाडा में पहले खालिस्तानी आतंकवादी निज्जर मारा गया, फिर सुक्खा का खेल खत्म हुआ और अब आतंकी पन्नू की बारी है। मतलब देश विरोधी कोई दुश्मन बचेगा नहीं।
This is Republic TV. And this news channel is the most watched news outlet in India. So this is a mainstream news outlet in India saying that there's going to be a surgical strike against Khalistanis, saying that any Khalistanis within India should have their assets, their properties confiscated. It then continues to say that Khalistanis should not be allowed to be alive in India. And again, referring to terrorists, and they openly admit to the murder of Khalistani terrorists in Canada. So, I don't even need to sort of add anything to that, James. I think before we go on to the next topic of this, I want to hear your thoughts on this. I mean, it just does not get more outrageous than that.
And that's, just amazing, Angus, that they continue through their own media to announce that they have taken those steps of transnational repression here in Canada. And of course, in the U.S. And I mean, right there on the screen, they're showing, Gurpatwant Singh Panoon. And I mean, they have confiscated his property. They have taken contracts out on his life. He is, a big target for them. And yet the government themselves turn around and say, oh, not us. We would never be involved in such activity. And yet they brag to their own nation that they are doing this stuff. So, yeah, it just shows the two-face of the BJP, the RSS, the Raw Agency, and, of course, the Hindutva media that is just propagating more and more of this hatred and division in the world community.
This is it's an absolute democratic outrage for a nation that calls itself a democracy. This is the mainstream news channel endorsing the murder of citizens, not just in its own country but overseas. And again, these are people who want to argue for secession, for breakaway of their area, for a referendum, for a basic independence of their nation. That in any nation, we've had this. You've had it in Canada, James. We've had it in the UK. This is equivalent, for example, in the UK, of the BBC saying all Scottish nationalists should be shot. That is literally what the equivalent of. Likewise in Canada, the main news channel in Canada, James, saying that all Quebecy or Quebecois independence campaigners should be shot. That is the equivalent. So again, I just shake my head in utter disbelief, and it's just horrific. Anyway, let's move on. And of course, in that video, Govt Singh Panoon was, of course, targeted. He was mentioned. He was singled out amongst several others as a target. And we do know that India has been planning to assassinate him. Again, this so-called democratic nation of India now running out of control. Now, Govt Singh Panoon did actually comment just the other day about these deportations back to India, back to Punjab, and of course many of our commenters said, look, why did this deportation flight land in Amritsar? Well, Govt Singh Panoon's also waded into this same discussion, and he's given his thoughts as well, which actually I think align with many of the thoughts elsewhere. He actually has released a video exposing how India has forced this US military plane to land at Amritsar, which is an unprecedented move, but it was deliberately aimed at intimidating Sikh asylum seekers. And while the Trump administration, he says, has upheld asylum protection for pro-Khalistan Sikhs, it took a hard stance against the Modi-backed Hindu nationalists from Gujarat and Haryana, many of whom are illegally smuggled into the US. Now, what he's actually asked, he's suggested to all India diaspora people is document any incidents of harassment, threats and political suppression, to gather evidence of police intimidation, false charges and state surveillance, and most importantly, keep records of threats from Hindutva groups or Indian security forces. These documents will then strengthen their asylum claims and improve the chances of securing protection in the US, Canada, the UK or the European Union. But he says that Modi's government has been deliberately weaponizing these US deportations to send a chilling message, which is Sikhs fleeing persecution will then face India's violent transnational oppression upon return. And so he says that the move was deliberately calculated to deter Sikhs from seeking asylum and expose them to renewed persecution upon their return flight. He made it very clear that he thinks this landing in Amritsar rather than Delhi was a deliberate ploy to send a chilling message to any other Sikhs thinking about fleeing to the United States. He did say that of the 104 deportees, and this reflects actually what we reported yesterday, only 30 were from Punjab. The remaining 74 included 33 from Gujarat, of course that's Modi's home state, and 33 from Haryana. And they were economic migrants, not asylum seekers, unlike most of the Sikhs who actually probably were asylum seekers fleeing from Modi's persecution. And he said that instead of following the standard protocols by landing in Delhi, Modi's government deliberately forced the plane to land in Amritsar, and that was a deliberate act of intimidation. So, and he said, if Sikhs are trying to escape India, Modi is saying that we will ensure they are sent straight back into persecution. So, now, I think they'll say that aligns pretty much with our own sort of interpretation of the situation. Certainly most of our commenters, I think, were deeply suspicious of that. Now, Jagtar Singh Johal then actually released another video. This is quite interesting. This is an interesting turn of events. Now, Narendra Modi is due to meet Donald Trump. I think it's tomorrow or Thursday. Certainly is travelling to the United States over the next couple of days to have discussions. Right. Of course, this is in light of Trump's potential threat of tariffs and things like that. And of course, lots of discussions on the agenda. I have no doubt the Sikh organisations will, prior to his previous meeting with Biden, that they were lobbying the US administration to make sure that their issues were heard. I have no doubt the Sikh organisations will, behind the scenes, have been lobbying the Trump administration likewise in advance of this meeting. Now, certainly Sikhs for Justice have been doing their bit. And before Modi's meeting with Trump in the US, Sikhs for Justice have announced that RAW, that's the Research and Analysis Wing, and IB agents will inform the US government about the plot to kill pro-Khalistan Sikhs. In return, they will get political asylum and protection. Now, what this basically means is, let me just show you, I'll show you an excerpt from his latest video where you get a flavour of, well, Panoon in full flow, but this makes interesting viewing.
India's face of Hindu terror, Narendra Modi is heading to Washington, D.C. to meet President Trump. Now is the time for the intelligence officials who are being placed in the diplomatic missions, RAW and IB officials, as well as military officials. Now is the time to defect, expose and cooperate with the US government. If you expose and cooperate with the US government and provide them with the witness evidence of the kill list of Modi's government, you will be given a new identity and legal safety along with the resettlement. Sikhs for Justice has a $1 million safety fund to protect safe travel and seek asylum for you. Now is your time. Ajit Raval and Jaishankar will accompany Narendra Modi, most probably. Give the evidence and we will make sure that they are criminally prosecuted under the international laws.
Okay, this is really interesting. Basically, Sikhs for Justice has a $1 million fund that they put together to help support any whistleblowers. And they are appealing for anybody within the Indian intelligence agencies and the infrastructure to report to the United States anything that they can bring out about Narendra Modi's transnational repression, about this policy to murder Khalistanis, and anything behind this transnational repression program. So basically saying, look, there's a $1 million fund to protect you. You will be given witness protection, you will be given a new identity, and you will essentially live a good and healthy life in the United States, protected from Narendra Modi. All you need to do is release what he calls his kill list. In other words, this target list of Khalistanis that Narendra Modi clearly has put together and his infrastructure in India have put together. But they will be offered witness protection, new ID and a new life promise. So this is quite it's quite a big move. I don't know if it will be enough to tempt anybody within India, but I'm sure there must be some honourable agents within RAW who must be a little bit uncomfortable about the policies that Modi's government and the BJP have been instituting. Essentially, the cold-blooded murder of people both overseas and domestically. So there is a chance that maybe somebody within that whole massive organisation in India might actually become a whistleblower. They might be tempted by this. Certainly New Life in the United States, they of course will be looked after if they carry interesting information and intelligence. So it could be, who knows, maybe this will tempt somebody out of that organisation to speak out in private to US intelligence. But certainly, I think Jagtar Singh Johal going on the offensive now. I think he's obviously been a target of India. He's been on the back foot to some degree, certainly after this assassination attempt. Yeah. But his referendum campaign is still continuing. Of course, that's taking its next step very shortly. And but he's taking the fight to India. He's taking the battle to India. He's saying, right, you can attack me, but certainly, hey, I'm going to do everything in my power. I have lots of support, lots of resources, and let's see if we can start undermining the Indian side, James. This is an interesting move forward.
Absolutely, and I must say that I don't recall ever seeing private bounties on information like this coming out and being announced to the general public. So it's definitely a very bold and very innovative approach to dealing with this. We know that it's not uncommon for governments, to offer incentives and, witness protection and so forth. But to see it coming out from a private citizen is a whole new level. And let's face it, $1 million relocation to the U.S. and all of those supports just might get the information.
Absolutely.
We'll watch and see how it plays out, Angus.
Indeed. Well, we'll keep an eye on that story, and certainly if he manages to seduce anybody out of the woodwork, we'll definitely report on that. So well done to Mr. Panoon on that. Right, Jez, let's move on to our comments section. Loads of comments coming in as usual. Thank you so much to all our commenters who've contributed enormously to these comment sections. There have been some fascinating comments coming in. Devinder Gill starts off today's show with 2 Indian Hindu Gujarati-owned companies indicted for distributing fentanyl chemicals to USA. What's going on with that case? Well, yes, indeed. That's a very good question. Of course, there was Athos Chemicals and Raksuta Chemicals with the two Indian companies that were indicted for supplying these precursor chemicals, as they're called, that can then lead on to the production of fentanyl. Both Gujarati companies, they were charged in the United States with distributing the ingredients and conspiring to distribute them. And of course, their senior executive, Bhavesh Lataya, was also charged with smuggling and introducing misbranded drugs into interstate commerce. Well, the answer to your question is not a lot has been happening other than it's a lot of legal process. And as we reported earlier in the show, in terms of the Nijjar potential killers, the accused, the law is a slow process. A lot of things need to be done, a lot of evidence gathering, etc., etc. And the prosecution will be preparing their case. The defence, likewise, have to be given time to prepare their case. This is what the delay is. Unfortunately, nothing actually in terms of moving things forward in terms of court cases has happened since then. It was only early January that it actually happened. So it's only been a few weeks. So all I would say is be patient, Devinder. We will get there. They will have their time in court. Unfortunately, it just takes time for both sides to prepare their evidence for when they appear in court. Modi drink mood. This does
take time.
Indeed they do, James, as we often say. Modi Drink Mood says, look, India's playing a very dirty game. They know families put their land on loan. They mortgage their properties and their lands, of course, to send kids out to work and play. And that land then gets acquired by India, well, essentially by the wealthy, from the Punjabi Sikhs. And Sikhs don't understand that land is the most valuable thing of all. Now, this is an interesting comment, James. I think this reflects a lot that happens in the West. This is the transfer of wealth. and land is wealth at the end of the day. This is the transfer of wealth from the bottom of the ladder up to the top of the ladder. And this is happening in Punjab, where, of course, people who own land but don't have a lot of money, they end up mortgaging, they borrow money from banks. But of course, the collateral for that loan is their land, is their property. If they can't repay the loan, the banks take ownership of that land. And thus, that land, that wealth is transferred from the owners, the poor people, up to the wealthy bank owners. And this happens not just in the Punjab, but it actually happens all around the world. And this is something that has been increasingly happening. We talk about it, we refer to it every now and again, but certainly a lot of people, there is a lot of people out there in the world currently worried about this massive transfer of wealth from the relatively poor up to the extremely wealthy, this 1%. Unfortunately, this also, as you rightly point out, is happening in the Punjab. This is the wealthy elite, the ruling elite of India, are sucking up the wealth. This wealth gap between the wealthy and the poor is increasing, even in a country like India, where that wealth gap has always been in existence. And of course, it's very polarised, James, is it not?
Absolutely, Angus, and we know that this is an ongoing issue, especially fertile farmlands and such, that the people with the money want it. They want to have that control, and those that control the food chain control a lot more than just the food itself. And, if there wasn't value there, of course, the Modi government wouldn't be going after Khalistanis and taking their property and trying to take that land, because they know there's value in it. And it's just another game that's being played to try to suppress, oppress, and to negate the importance of the Sikh community and those in Punjab.
Indeed, absolutely. And again, as you talk about the Khalistan movement, of course, it's going to be harder for the Khalistan movement to establish itself if the land is all owned by the Indian wealthy, the wealthy elite.
That's right.
So they know what they're doing. It's a devious, insidious plan in place. 5 AAB, this made me chuckle actually. The stupidity of Mr. Modi. He allowed this American spy plane, the C-17, to glide through Gujarat's capital Ahmedabad and Chandigarh and then land at Amritsar. Well, American spy agencies have all the info they need now because they were allowed to fly over there. Well, I did chuckle at this, James. I mean, yes, in theory, but I think in practice, I think the US has enough spy satellites that can probably read the newsprint on somebody in the street reading a newspaper. So I think it's unlikely that any actually valuable intelligence would have been gathered by this aeroplane, James. But I think it's a nice thought in theory.
Absolutely, Angus, and that's why we here in Canada get a laugh, and even in the U.S. When there's reports of these the Chinese spy balloons, the weather balloons floating over that we know have been happening. But at the same time, I mean, people say, oh, they're trying to steal information. Well, do you know what? Everybody's got their ass glued to a cell phone, to computers and technology. So believe me, they've got more access to information than you could imagine, and they're not getting it through weather balloons.
Absolutely right. And of course, and just a completely side issue there is that China manufactures most of the world's CCTV cameras. And if you ever, and I have a very comprehensive CCTV system at my place here, and I have to log into it, and it goes onto the internet. So China basically can view, I have no doubt, has a backdoor to every CCTV camera that's been installed right across North America and Europe. They basically have eyes on the ground all around Europe. Nobody talks about that, James, do they?
Yeah, you're worried about Google listening to you through your phone. Believe me, it's a lot more than Google just listening to you.
Absolutely it is. Indeed it is. Right, Danny. Danny has come in with again, another extensive comment. He's contributed a lot in our comment section recently. He talks about this Indian breakup, and he actually questions this whole concept of India breakup. He says, look, we must verify our facts. And then he goes on to some degree about Chinese Myanmar tribals migrating to northeast India, where Hindus also lived, and talks about Cambodia, etc., etc. But what the point, as you finish off, is the rest of India is not going to break up anytime soon. Go there and see. Well, yeah, I would love to go there and see, but I know if I set foot in India, I'd probably end up in a jail cell alongside Amritpal Singh for speaking out. But anyway, that's another issue. But Jaspal Chatterford then responds, look, South, even though follow Hindu religion, they want to create their own nations, Tamil, Nadu and Kerala. The East wants to be independent. West Punjab, of course, Khalistan, Kashmir and possibly Haryana will be independent. So actually, yeah, there are differing views here, James. I think I would say Danny's comment, I don't know. I'm interested for if there's anybody else in our audience who feels that India is not ripe for breakup. Please do let us know in your comments. Let me know your thoughts on why you don't think India is ripe for breakup. But clearly there are many who do believe India is ripe for a breakup. What I would say is, certainly on the face of it, I think the foundations are in place. At the moment, no, it's not going to break up immediately. But as we keep saying, it just takes one catalytic event. And we always refer to the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union, when it broke up, you look at literally a week before, it did not look like it would ever break up. Nobody, if you'd asked literally a week before the Soviet Union broke up, do you think it's likely the USSR break up? You'd have said no chance. Why would it? But suddenly, a week later, effectively, those dominoes started falling and the USSR broke up over a period of time. That is what we're saying with India. On the face of it, it doesn't look like it, but the cracks are there. These different regions are establishing their own, the cultural identity has always been there, but they're starting to be a little bit more belligerent, a little bit more forthright, a little bit more vocal about saying, look, why can't we have it our own way? Why can't we recognise our own individual cultures in our own regions? Why can't we make more of our own laws? Why is it that Delhi is taking more from us in taxes than we're receiving in return? So these are the elements that cause breakups. And James, I believe those elements are all in place. That's why we still believe India is ripe for it.
Absolutely, Angus. And I'll tell you right now that, if there's any viewers out there that want to sponsor the trip, I've got nothing planned for the next 8 years. So, I can go to India. Worst case, I get to hang out with Jaggy in a cell for my next 8 birthdays. But, it's absolutely that, the truth has got to get out. And for obvious reasons, we are very watched through our show. It may be banned in India, but the government's watching, because I can show you stats on my other social platforms and other channels where, there's a lot of interest from India on what I'm doing on social media. So I know it's not, I know a lot of it's probably the government raw and others that are keeping tabs. So.
Indeed, James. Well, if you're willing to sacrifice for the cause and fly to India, maybe you can do an internal report from Dibrugarh jail in Assam. I look forward to that one.
Well, let's hope that, it would be a good report and not one that needs to come from there. But at the same time, maybe the Canadian government would be more proactive to get me out than the British government. So.
Well, I have to say they couldn't be any worse than the British government, so let's hope it doesn't come to that. Deep Singh says, look, it's only the Sikh community that stood with the Muslims in Kashmir and all over the world, including Palestine, but some fools still showing their hate for us. This, of course, is after Islamic extremists were attacking the Guru Granth Sahib Ji, the Holy Scriptures on TikTok. But as you rightly point out, look, why? Because it's the Sikh community globally that have actually been standing up for the Islamic community. So why would you turn on the Sikh community? It makes no sense. I think my answer to that, James, is they are extremists. They don't understand this. They are by definition extremists, is that they will not tolerate any other religion apart from their own. And unfortunately, they exist at that extreme end of Islam. They are a problem, James, plain and simple.
Yeah, and that's part of the oppression, part of the violence, and a part of the polarization is that they want to have it their way and only their way. And yet you look at the amazing Sikh community and that religion that just welcomes everybody and encourages people to be the best of no matter what they are, whether it's Christian or Muslim or, whatever. They just want you to be the best person that you can be, no matter where you come from, no matter what you believe in. And it's a sad reality that, there are those who are just so focused on just creating havoc in the world based on the name of religion.
Indeed, and I think it vindicates the whole principle of Sikhi, and it reflects actually a Christian value, which is to turn the other cheek. So even though you might slap me, we will turn the other cheek, and that is what the Sikh community have done with the Islamic community. It doesn't matter. It does matter if you attack us, and certainly attack our holy scriptures. But we will still stand up for Islamic rights and Muslim rights wherever they may be, whether it's Kashmir or Palestine, etc. Mukhtar Singh, this is interesting, and because this whole topic that we talked about the other day was about a petition to here in the UK to ask for the Guru Granth Sahib Ji to be recognised legally on a legal basis as a living guru. In other words, if you attack the Holy Scriptures, you're effectively, in legal terms, being seen as attacking as a human being. But what Mukhtar tells us, I didn't know this, is that the Supreme Court in India has actually ruled that the Guru Granth Sahib Ji is actually a living guru. Properties can indeed be bought and registered in the Guru's name. Well, that's an interesting legal situation. So thank you for letting us know that one, Mukhtar. And then final one on this set is Jagtar Singh Johal. Now, James, this is an interesting one, and you weren't unfortunately on the show the other day, and it was a shame because I brought up a comment about this, and I was interested to know in your thoughts on this. Trump's proposal on Gaza. Now, Jagtar Singh Johal thinks it's totally unfair, and it's an insult to all innocent Palestinians who've been brutally killed. America in charge of Gaza means Israel in charge of Gaza. Yeah, well, James, of course, this is Trump's plan to take over the Gaza Strip and turn it into the Riviera of Gaza. Now, my personal thoughts on this is subject to obviously the details. I think in principle it's actually not a bad idea, because I think if you read behind the lines, if you actually look at what he really means, and I think it's all packaged up in Trump rhetoric. I'm going to take ownership. I'm going to rebuild it. I'm going to own it. We're going to kick everybody out. Actually, in practice, what it really means, and his spokesperson has said, look, what it actually really means is the US is going to oversee the rebuilding. We're going to use local partners, in other words, other Arabic states are going to finance it, help build it, and it is actually going to be repopulated by Arabs and probably Palestinians as well. I think that's in reality what he's talking about. But James, any thoughts on that outrageous Trump claim on Gaza?
I don't know that I should get started on that one, Angus, because I just shake my head. He's taken an idea that Jared Kushner had brought up last year, and he's just run with it. And I do think that from a standpoint of the Trump organization and other shell companies, I think that he sees it that he could have an opportunity to own some more Trump hotels and Trump resorts. I think it's disrespectful to the nation on all sides, to the Middle East as a whole. And I just... I'm going to hold it there, Angus, because, he's still going on, and I'm getting emails from the Trump campaign and Trump organizations and this and that, whereas they are still going off that they want to annex Canada. So I'm going to take the high road on this and leave it at that.
Absolutely, but I will stand by one of his arguments on this, and he said, look, you've all tried everything. You tried everything for the last 40 years. You tried it over and over again. It's just not working. It needs radical thinking. And I think whatever happens, it does need a radical solution to solve that mess in that area.
Absolutely. I don't dispute that. I absolutely agree. There's got to be a radical process and thought there for a whole new approach. But I just think that America, taking Trump out of the equation, I just think America needs to stay out of that part of it and let the Middle East come to some type of solution and find a way to move forward. Because I think that it's actually going to create more violence, more instability by having the U.S. presence there in any way.
It could well be, and I sense, again, from the common sense perspective, I think he's probably just going to, let's say, project manage it from a distance. And I think, as he said, he's going to use local partners, I think, to essentially be the local face of it. I think you're absolutely right. I think if and he has actually said, or his spokesman has said, we will not put boots on the ground. There will be no Americans there. Obviously, as you rightly say, James, I think that would be just one provocative step too far on that one. So.
Absolutely, Angus. And the other quick point is that, is he really having any serious consideration, or is he just trying to stir the pot and try to get the Middle East to come up with a solution that's outside of the box to make things progress? Does he actually just use this as a way to force them to come to the table and try to find their own solution?
Absolutely, I think that could be a very good point indeed. Let's not go down that rabbit hole too far. Fascinating topic. I'd love to talk more about it. I'll invite our audience, if you've got thoughts on that, let us know what you think about that whole situation.
Yes.
Harjinder Barraj says the main concept of Sikhism is to free humanity while believing their own faith. The whole idea is to get together and build a better world for everyone. Oppression from anyone is condemned and fought against. And I like this comment because I think encapsulates in 2 sentences what Sikhi is all about the goodness of Sikhi, and actually it is very ideological in a world that is far from ideological, in a world that is just full of so much mess. Again, I can immediately loop back to the Invictus Games and that poignant point that I made. That is just, I think that is indicative of how widespread war is, how many nations are affected by war. And I think Sikhi, as you rightly say, Harjinder, I think Sikhi is all about freeing humanity. It's about getting together and building a better world for everyone. Unfortunately, we're up against human nature. We're up against the 1 in 10 who for some reason just always feel obsessed about controlling, about stealing, about taking, about everything that generates war, James. Unfortunately, we're fighting against human nature here.
Absolutely, Angus, you're so right on that.
And the final set of comments, TC says, thank you. It's a pleasure. Thank you for your comment. Excellent journalism. Sincerely dedicated to the truth as always. And sending best wishes to you, James, after you were absent last week. And he says, Raj Karega, Khalsa Waheguru Ji Ka, Khalsa Waheguru Ji Ka Fateh. Now, Vinny Chorn waits in. Excellent journalist. Pay him and he will say anything. To which TC nicely replies, oh, he told you that, did he? No, I didn't tell Vinny Chorn that. And I think James and I, as we often say, and we're always accused of this, saying, oh, look, we're just paid to read out scripts. No, we are not. James and I are here voluntarily. We do this because we believe in the cause. We actually align with Sikhi. We see a lot of goodness. And it doesn't matter, as I said earlier, how ideological it is. We must all attain and align with Sikhi because it does stand for the goodness of humanity. Yes, we are up against human nature. And there are people like James and I who are more than happy to sit here on a daily basis and keep pushing the truth, keep pushing the agenda of Sikhi because it is a good agenda. We are happy to push the agenda of Khalistan because we believe in democracy. We believe in freedom. We believe that people should have the right to stand up for their own sovereignty, their own freedom of speech. They have democratic rights to live in a land in which they have a say and control in how their land is governed, how their society is governed, James. We stand for the truth and we stand for democracy. It's as simple as that, James.
Absolutely. And let's face it, I don't know of any other religion that really takes to action the words in which they speak, and that is the humanity, the uplifting of people who may be seen by other religions or other parts of society as being less than, but not in Sikhi. Everybody's equal, everybody is treated as one, and everyone is welcome to come through the doors to get a meal or to be uplifted in many different ways.
Indeed, and what a great note to finish on, James. A powerful note to finish on. Unfortunately, that is the end of another Perspectives for another day. Please don't forget to keep those comments coming in. We really appreciate them. Always gives us loads of really interesting information to check out. So do keep those coming in. And don't forget, you can message us directly at message@satlodgetv.com if there's anything you'd like to bring to our attention directly that you don't want to put in the public domain. But in the meantime, that is it for another day. Thanks so much for watching. It is a goodbye from me, and it's a goodbye from James.
Stay safe, everyone.
You have, of course, been watching Perspectives. We will see you next time.